Good afternoon. Today is Friday, the 3rd of October, 2025, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish, delighted to be joined today by Patrick Henningson. Patrick is in France. He'll be coming in on live link. And also we have Mark Anderson, who'll be joining us on live link from Texas. So welcome to both my guest presenters. Now, as you can see, the weather is decidedly poor here in UK, but not to worry about that because we've got lots of hot political news for you. We're going to be covering the Manchester Synagogue attacks. We're going to be having a look at the Greta Thunberg Flotilla and Israel. We'll be, of course, covering the banks and the international banking system because nothing happens without big money. We're also going to be looking at the Paloma Shemirani Inquest and some of the more hidden fallout from that tragic inquest that's just taken place. We'll be also covering Trump's love-in with Pfizer. We're going to be having a little look at the French-Ukrainian relations and indeed politics around Moldova. We'll be taking a look about what Prince William is talking about, which is change in the monarchy. And also we've got some interesting footage of people actually now starting to really get out to say we are going to change and stop what is happening with regard to Keir Starmer's UK politics. So let's kick off with a little bit of background to where Keir Starmer was before he was pulled back to UK for his emergency Cobra meeting. And he was present in Copenhagen. This is just part of the media release, the 7th meeting of the European political community. It looks fairly dull from a media sense, but actually if we bring in one of the photographs, we can see that there was some extraordinary images and a lot of body language between some pretty powerful people. So in the picture on screen, we've got what we're describing as the EU head teacher, Ursula von der Leyen, who's admonishing a rather petulant trainee Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. So just have a look at the expression on the faces of those two women. And of course, whilst we might be laughing, this is where the deep power politics gets played out. But let's bring in our very own Keir Starmer. No, he isn't wearing some sort of flowery headdress. That's just a trick of the camera. But we've got some interesting expressions here with Queen Mary of Denmark sitting as the rose between the two poisonous thorns, which is Starmer there to her right and Macron to her left. Trick of the camera. We should also pay attention to the fact, of course, this was banqueting, this was fine wine and dining while the rest of the mayhem goes on in the world. Now, Keir Starmer had to cut his little visit short because of the synagogue attack, and he came straight back for a Cobra meeting. Now, tragic events that have taken place in Manchester. The latest is that we've got one victim that is now being it's now being said about one victim that they were hit by police gunfire. So we'll wait to see what information comes out about that. We've got 2 Jewish men killed by being hit by a car. We've got 3 people in hospital and we've got 3 people arrested. Now, this is just a little clip that was taken as the event was taking place. It's widely available on the media, but we'll just bring it in to set the scene. One casualty on the ground and the police armed and very aggressive. Let's have a look.
They've killed him. No, they were them.
Everybody else, get back! If you're not involved, move back! Get away! Somebody stay with you! Everybody else, he has the ball! Go away!
So we'll say dangerous situation, but also at the time the police claiming that the man prostrate on the ground was also had explosives with him. So that warning. Let's just have a little look at this clip of Keir Starmer.
The attack in Manchester this morning is absolutely shocking, and all of our thoughts are with those affected. I'm on my way back to London. When I arrive, I will chair an emergency COBRA meeting. I'm already able to say that additional police assets are being deployed to synagogues across the country, and we will do everything to keep our Jewish community safe. I've spoken to Mark Gardner of the CST and Andy Burnham, Mayor of Manchester, and I want to thank the emergency services for the speed of their response.
So we'll say a tragic attack on the Jewish community there, but Keir Starmer adamant he's going to do everything possible. Remember David Cameron saying that his belief in Israel was unshakable. Israel appears to come first. But Starmer then started quite a chain of media announcements about this attack. So we've got another clip.
Good evening. Earlier today, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day for the Jewish community, a vile individual committed a terrorist attack that attacked Jews because they are Jews, and attacked Britain because of our values. So many Jewish families first came to this country as a place of refuge, fleeing the greatest evil ever inflicted on a people. And Britain welcomed them. Communities like the one attacked in Manchester provided safety, but also the security that comes from a promise that this is a country that stands up to hatred, and that we don't just provide refuge, we provide a home. For so many Jewish families, that is the story of Britain. But Britain is also a country where Jewish buildings, synagogues, even schools require round-the-clock protection, where dedicated specialist security is necessary because of the daily threat of anti-Semitic hatred. Today's horrific incident shows why.
So my personal reply to that is I've never heard Keir Starmer with this level of passion about defending the rest of the people in the UK. So as far as I'm concerned, this is highly biased reporting, and that doesn't detract from the seriousness of the attack or the suffering of the Jewish community in Manchester. Patrick, just bring you in with us very quickly, because Keir Starmer is clearly very, very motivated by this. We haven't seen this passion in relation to the tens of thousands of people killed in Gaza or the ongoing slaughter in Ukraine, for example.
Sure. I think it's personally, I'm looking at the forensic side of the case. It's too early. There's not a lot of details. And certainly we'd want to know more about the assailant, the suspect, the motivation, the background. That will all be very interesting and perhaps revealing as to what we're actually looking at here. So that's where my eyes are. That's where my concern is. But, considering what's happening right now in the Middle East, and the world's eyes are on the Gaza Strip, there's an ongoing genocide happening as we speak right now in 2025. And, some world leaders are paying attention to this and, trying to intervene to stop Israel, slow them down. Colombian President Gustavo Petro, for instance, is talking about deploying armed military personnel to act as peacekeepers. They're talking about sanctioning Israel. So over 150 countries in the UN actually condemning Israel's actions and voting to recognize a Palestinian state. So certainly that's worthy of a press conference, I would think. From any world leader, especially a G7 leader or a leading NATO country. So yes, it's certainly Keir Starmer's wheelhouse, if you will, politically. He's there. He's always reiterated his support, his unflinching support for the Jewish community and concerns for the Jewish community in Israel and so forth. So no one's really surprised by the press coverage and the reaction after this.
Patrick, thank you very much. We'll bring you back in again shortly. But just to finish this segment of the news, in the first clip with Starmer, he mentioned CST. Now, many people will be unaware of what that is. Let's just have a look at this still from a BBC clip. If you look in the background, you can see a man with CST on his jacket. And what we're talking about is this organisation, which is essentially a private security force protecting solely Jewish interests, but very, very powerful and working closely with the UK police and intelligence services. And apparently they are working to assist the police in tackling hate crime across the board and preventing terrorism. They operate a database where I went to have a look and see if I could find out how many Jewish people have actually died in UK as a result of terror attacks. And whilst this organisation does have databases, so it talks about a methodical insight into chronology, sequence and details of UK terror attacks and plots. It talks about UK counter-terrorism policing and the UK Security Service providing updated figures, but it's all a bit woolly. It says the absence of a public record makes it difficult for researchers to look for information on terrorism. And then it boasts that CST's databases should help stimulate a constructive discussion on terrorism trends. So this is not just logging what's happening to the Jewish community. This is about driving public opinion. And if you have a look at the databases, I tried just to search for the number of Jewish people who have unfortunately died as a result of terror attacks. I tried a number of combinations of information, but as the database works, what you find is it doesn't bring up specific information about the Jewish community. It spreads it over jihadist and other terrorism, right-wing terrorism, etc. So this blurs your ability to be able to get detail out, and I was unable to establish how many Jewish individuals have died as a result of terrorism in UK from 2013 to 2025. So I'm just going to post over this that it does seem that these databases are blurring the lines between attacks on the Jewish community and other so-called terrorist or extremist attacks. Why this is, I think a lot more questions need to be asked. But of course, across the board, we're seeing now wall-to-wall coverage about the Manchester attack, almost blanking out other events in the world. Well, if that's what's been happening here in UK, Patrick, let's bring you back in with us, because you've been having a look at the Flotilla, Greta Thunberg's Flotilla. What's been happening around that?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It's not actually Greta Thunberg's flotilla. It's the global Sumud flotilla. There's over 500 humanitarians and activists from around the world, one of which is Greta Thunberg, along with many others, including many from the UK and Ireland as well. We'll talk about some of those individuals in a moment, but global Sumud. Sumud in Arabic means perseverance. It means steadfastness. So it's interesting that they've used that term. But what's interesting, Brian, about this is the mainstream coverage. And here, this is Reuters. So CNN, Reuters, they've all finally covered they even covered the fact that Israel was launching drone attacks in international waters and even in Greek territorial waters, if I'm not mistaken, against some of the flotilla ships over the last week or so. And there's Greta giving her final, one of her final video messages there. All of the activists uploaded kind of, if you will, last words before they were apprehended. So those were already ready to go. Some of them actually did it with their life jackets on as the IDF were boarding their ships. So Israel interdicted, seized, kidnapped, abducted all of the people on board, all of the ships, taken all of the ships, I think in total 40 boats. We'll look at the numbers in a moment here, but here are some of the details we'll bring up on screen. Israel faced international condemnation and protests on Thursday after its military intercepted almost all of the 40 boats in this wave of the flotilla. And they were carrying aid to Gaza, and they took captive more than 450 foreign activists, humanitarians, including Swedish campaigner Greta Thunberg. So I think because Greta was on board, that's probably one of the reasons why this got so much mainstream coverage, and because she's by far the most high-profile activist individual on there. So from that point of view, from the organization and the effort, the campaign's point of view, I think that was probably a positive thing here. Now, we've broken down some of the details and granular analysis of this at 21st Century Wire. The headline, Israel, the Pirates of the Mediterranean. This can only be described as a massive act of piracy on the high seas. And we'll look at the international law in a moment. But here's a video clip. We'll bring this up on screen. And this is interesting. So here we have footage of, which I'll speak over the top of, but here we have footage of the IDF actually boarding one of the ships. So they all had CCTV cameras that were live streaming. The boats were very well prepared. As you can see, the IDF are coming up here on this particular vessel. And so this is how it kind of went. And so over the course of 14 hours, IDF forces illegally seized the boats, impounded all the humanitarian aid on board, including baby formula and things like this, just things that you can't get, including fresh water in Gaza here. And you can see this is one of the parts where they're actually boarding. What you'll find here towards the end of this clip is interesting. They basically stormed the boats and held the humanitarians at gunpoint. They had their weapons drawn and fingers almost on the trigger. I didn't take a close enough look, but as you can see on this footage here, it'll sort of advance in a moment towards that point where you can see with the actual weapons drawn as they get onto the ship, pointing the barrels of the muzzles of their guns, automatic weapons, in the faces, in the backs of the heads, in some cases, of some of the humanitarians and people on board this ship. Now, these are people from European countries, South America, from Asia, from the United States, from Northern Ireland, from the Republic of Ireland, from Great Britain, and from North Africa as well, including Arab members as well from Arab countries. So that's what's happening. It's absolutely incredible. Now, there is an amazing piece of footage, Brian. Tiago Avila, who is from Brazil, he was on one of the earlier individual boats that basically got seized, I think the Madeleine, and he was incarcerated and captive in the Israeli gulag, was released, went back home, and he came back on the global Sumud with many more boats. And this is when the IDF are hailing his boat, and you'll hear his reply to the Israeli person at the other end with an American suburban accent, which is something in itself. But listen to it's a powerful statement he made to the Israelis here. We've got the audio clip, which we can watch.
In an active war zone. If you continue and attempt to breach the naval blockade, we will stop your vessel and act to confiscate it through legal proceedings in court. You bear full responsibility for your actions.
Say that we are entering an active war zone. You're saying that we are entering a place where you're committing war crimes. This is against international law. Once again, the International Court of Justice made a provisional ruling that any attempt to hinder a humanitarian mission to Gaza is prohibited by international law and is complying with the request to make you accountable for the crime of genocide. The International Criminal Court has your Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu under an arrest warrant for the crime of starving children and starving people to death, using starvation and famine as a weapon of war. Therefore, it's our moral duty to continue sailing. It's our moral duty to refuse any attempt of an occupying force to control humanitarian aid for the Palestinian people in Gaza, who have the right of their sovereignty, who have the right of their self-determination, and to control their own borders. Therefore, we do not recognize you as a legitimate agent to control any attempt to bring aid to the Palestinian people in Gaza. We request you to stand down, to do not commit another war crime among so many that you've been committing, and to stand down. Do not engage with our peaceful, non-violent, humanitarian solidarity mission for the Palestinian people in Gaza. I advise you again,
So as you can see, I mean, a powerful statement there. That will go down in history, and in my book anyway, as one of the greatest sort of confrontations there, really telling the Israelis where things are at. Now, we just for jurisprudence, Brian, here, we'll pull up the United Nations Convention as a Law of the Sea so people know they can go to, that's page 7 of the table of contents, and that will link you to this document's available online, just a Google search there. And also, just on terms of the territorial waters, these boats, most of them were seized about 70 to 100 nautical miles off the coast of Israeli-controlled waters of occupied Palestine here. And we'll just blow up this point here, territorial sea, up to a limit not exceeding 12 nautical miles. So clearly, Israel's in violation of all international law and the law of the sea. And I will add as well, and this was relayed to us, we were in touch and talking to 2 of the boats and 3 members of the flotilla, including Dr. Frank Romano and also the journalist Yara Madarelli. She is an Italian journalist who's also a contributor at 21stcenturywire.com. She was on the Metek boat along with the Irish comedian and performing artist Tag Hickey. And so they were able to relay some of this information to us. Israel had sent a message to all of these boats to go to the port of Ashkelon, and they said, you will not be harmed. We will take your humanitarian aid and distribute it to the people of Gaza. But because certain people had a very violent experience with the Israelis before, they said they didn't trust them. And the flotilla made a decision not to take the Israeli offer to go to the Israeli port of Ashkelon. And they said, no, we're bringing humanitarian aid. We're within international law. We're going to Gaza. And so they did. So that was an interesting detail here. And there's a press release here, and this was from the flotilla. This is from their legal representative in the UK, and they're saying Global Sumud Flotilla is urging UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper to take immediate steps to ensure their safety and security in the face of attacks. And they add, it is urgent that the UK government joins Spain and Italy in ensuring the security of the flotilla. Now, that came just a few days ago. Obviously, things have changed now. And this is quite extraordinary here. One boat nearly made it through. And you can see people on the beach here, Brian, in Gaza, on the strip. And the boat called the Makino made it 9 miles off the coast before it was eventually seized by the IDF, by the Israeli forces. It nearly made it through. So they nearly overwhelmed the Israeli naval assets. And the people were just hoping that some of this aid would make it through. And we have a video of one of the young girls. Her name is Shahid on shore. And she released this video of her drawing a picture of the flotilla coming. It's quite a moving video. We just thought we'd share it with you because it's just extraordinary. But go ahead and roll that. So it's pretty extraordinary. And also, we're going to add here that there's another wave of flotilla ships coming from another sister organization, the Freedom Flotilla Coalition here. Reuters is running the live stream from these boats, which to me is incredible that that's actually happening. So they're on the way. There's a number of ships in there. There's other flotillas that are being launched from Turkey as well. They're heading to Gaza, so we'll see what happens. They've got a list here of some of the new ships We'll put that up on screen. People can go to the Global Sumud Flotilla account. We've got the X account here. We'll bring their account page up on screen next. But that's where people go for updates. You can go and find all of their stuff there. And I thought I'd just add here, we'll bring this up on screen. Israeli Navy seizes flotilla ships. Oh, it was a previous slide anyway. But while they're pounding Gaza and basically destroying whole blocks, residential blocks, that's what's actually happening. So it's an incredible situation there. And we gave a live stream interview here. We'll put up on screen on the Sunday Wire on Sunday. We spoke to Yara Madarelli and Tag Hickey on the live via Starlink, and you can look at the the full interview up at 21stcenturywire.com. And she's advanced one more, and you can see their faces there. There they are. And so that was a great conversation. That's the last live stream interview they did before they were seized. They're currently incarcerated in Israel. So that's where that story is at the moment. It's an extraordinary story, but we'll find out more hopefully by the end of today and by Monday.
Patrick, thank you very much for that report. There's a lot to discuss there. We'll save some of it for UK Column Extra after today's news. But yeah, lots of questions to be asked about actions in international waters. Mark, let's bring you on. Welcome to UK Column News today. I'll just say that one thing is for sure, that as the wars go on in the Middle East, as in Ukraine, it's the international banking system rubbing their hands with glee as more and more profits are accrued from the war, the violence, the ammunition, the munitions. And not surprising, I think that you focused in on Mark Carney today.
Indeed, keeping my eye on the think tanks like usual. They, again, kind of cement the relationship between the plutocratic class and the political class, always an important thing to watch. This time I went to the good old Council on Foreign Relations itself, not its Chicago cousin and not Chatham House. And Mark Carney, your friend and mine, the neoliberal banker, the emblematic face of international banking, formerly Bank of Canada, formerly Bank of England. He's now PM of Canada, replacing Trudeau, of course. And he spoke with Michael Froman very recently this past week about the foreign policy of Canada. And briefly, before I get into the fact that they talked about the two-state solution and Carney's apparent support of it, they got into a little bit more about the big trade deals and some of the trade intentions. And let's put this on the screen in terms of Canada's foreign policy economically. Mr. Carney touched on the existing Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP. It's an existing thing, but it took all the way from 2006 up to the relative present to get it all buttoned together, back and forth over the years. And it's focusing like the Ditchley Foundation, they're focusing on the Indo-Pacific, now the world's leading region of economic growth. It's offering big opportunities for trade and expansion, things like that. And the UK is reaching the 1 year mark. Let's put that on the screen. And as of December 15th this year, the UK will have reached the 1 year mark. It was a little less than a year ago that the UK officially became a member of this trade partnership. That's 11 or so nations, counting Canada and Brunei and Japan and several others. People can read that from the show notes. And this is marking a significant achievement for the UK as the first non-founding and first European country to join this trade partnership. The UK is now the second largest economy in this group after Japan. And I'll mention, too, that this ties into last week. We'll show this just as a reminder. When I did an update on the Ditchley Foundation, having just concluded another one of their meetings, they're also focusing in a slightly more military strategy context on the Indo-Pacific area. So there's a lot of focus on the Indo-Pacific area in terms of trade, in terms of policing the globe, things like that. Now, I have some video clips because the conversation quickly turned to Gaza, and Mr. Carney briefly mentioned that they're going to expand trade within Canada and reduce trade barriers and improve the regulatory framework among the Canadian provinces, and also that Canada, because of friction with the United States, is going to reach out to the European Union much more in terms of trade and investments, although Canada recognizes it still needs to be in good standing with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement that replaced NAFTA a few years ago. And that tripartite or trilateral agreement, rather, is going to be reviewed again in 2026. So Carney does want to stay with good relations with the U.S. and Mexico for purposes of that agreement, even though he's going to do more in trade within Canada and with the European Union. And the European Union is actually looking at joining that Trans-Pacific Partnership that I just described. So that's still in the making. But Mr. Carney then told Michael Froman of the CFR that he and Canada support a two-state solution. Now, how sincere and how meaningful this is remains to be seen. But let's listen to a little bit about what Mr. Carney had to say about a two-state solution.
I believe yesterday, Canada joined some European countries in recognizing Palestinian statehood. What do you expect that to accomplish?
Well, I think the first thing to say is this is consistent with our policy since 1947. Every Canadian government, whether of whatever political stripe, has supported a two-state solution, as many other countries have. What we have been seeing, first because of the acts of these heinous acts of Hamas, but then other in terms of response, is that prospect is receding before our eyes. Okay, so the idea of waiting until all the conditions are in place for a free and viable Palestinian state committed to peace and security side by side with the state of Israel, as what I've called a Zionist Palestinian state, which is what we want. Those conditions being in place, keeping the concept there on the shelf, when it is the avowed policy of the Israeli government that there will never be a Palestinian state. That is the policy of the current Israeli government, and their actions are consistent with that policy. And I can just concentrate on what's going on in the West Bank, without touching Gaza. So what we're looking to accomplish is to keep that front and center, to be with a host of influential but not decisive countries. So we're alongside the Kingdom of Saudi, not in the recognition, but as part of this process, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, France, UK, Australia, Qatar, Egypt, others, Norway, actively trying to create conditions at a minimum for a ceasefire, obviously, and then a peace process that's part of that.
Yeah, interestingly enough, and it's worth mentioning, Michael Froman, the host, he happens to be Jewish. There's a lot of Jewish influence at the CFR. David Rubenstein is the head of the board of directors, the chairman of the board of the CFR. And so the neoliberal wing of certain Jewish interests and the CFR in general, which is globalist, generally speaking, is obviously much more sympathetic to Gaza. Now, whether it's too little too late or whether this is just for optics, just for, public relations, and maybe they're not real sincere or maybe they're not real hopeful that it'll ever happen, the two-state solution, some of that remains to be seen. We have one other, I believe, shorter clip from Mark Carney that sort of rounds out what he just got done saying, however.
We're under no illusions that this is any sort of panacea, but it's necessary in our judgment, and the judgment of most other countries in the world, that we have to push on this now because, as I say, the possibility, in absolute violation of the UN Charter and in absolute violation of international law, of self-determination for the Palestinian peoples is being erased.
So he is saying that the window of opportunity is quickly closing. Now, moving on, we have the president emeritus of the CFR, who also just happened to grow up in a Jewish heritage, and he once considered being a rabbi, Richard Haas. On Foreign Affairs, he posted this article with a rather interesting headline: "A Palestinian state would be good for Israel." But that had a pay window on it. And so I found another article that was very similar in tone, and I got a couple quotes from the former president of the CFR about this issue. The first one, he said the following: regarding France, the UK, Canada, and Australia recognizing the state of Palestine, behind this move is deep frustration with what Israel is doing in Gaza and the West Bank, with their own inability to influence Israeli actions, those that want statehood for Palestine, and with what is seen as U.S. passivity and unwillingness to rein in Israel. Mr. Haas went on to say, and he also had this to say: one problem is that, at least for the time being, the shift toward statehood, a two-state solution, is just rhetorical. The decision to recognize a Palestinian state does not improve the prospect of ending the war in Gaza or actually creating a viable Palestinian state. So Mr. Haas is sounding a more pessimistic note on this, Brian. But nevertheless, the globalist community that usually is somewhat pro-Israel or kind of silent on the matter is being a little more outspoken. And we'll see where that goes. Meanwhile, of course, they're trying to juice up that worldwide trade deal that is an ongoing holiday for the bankers and those in the banking community. So back to you.
Mark, thank you very much. My opinion on Mark Carney speaking there was that he was terrified that he might say the wrong thing. And what came out was effectively waffle. But he was very frightened of saying the wrong thing and criticizing the very Zionist state, which he says needs to be formed. Again, we'll come on to this more in UK Column Extra. Now, important thing to say is a huge thank you to everybody that supports UK Column, wherever you are in the world. It is your financial support through memberships or donations or purchases through our online shop which keep the UK Column going. And our ambition for 2026 is to be growing in order to get more news content out, and of course to help that reach as far as possible. Now, if you get onto the website, you can go to the support our work and the click button in order to sign up with a monthly or annual membership or make a donation. And we'd encourage as many people as possible to do this if you appreciate what we do and would like us to grow. Now, we have been, of course, mentioning our UK Column on Location event in York coming up on the 18th. Some really excellent speakers: Andrew Wakefield, Dr. Liz Evans, our own Ben Rubin, Tess Laurie, and Sir Julian Rose. But if you're not able to get there, we've sold out of those tickets. You can, of course, view on our online system. And if you visit UK Column Shop, you can purchase an online viewing ticket. So if you're there overseas, excuse me, and you'd like to join us, have a think about that live stream ticket. Now, on the UK Column website, Military Matters, a discussion between Charles Mallett and myself, Brian Gerrish. That one's gone up. We've had some very interesting comments. We're just talking in very quiet terms about what's happening in Britain's military, and we're really asking a question. Does the country need military people, and should people be signing up with UK's military? Have a look at that via the website if you haven't already seen it. We've also got another article up, A Paradise for Zionism, Celtic Park in the 1990s and the 2000s. This is an interesting article. It's talking about the influence of Zionism through sport. So not even sport is safe from being used as a political tool. And lastly, we just remind people that 1,000 Words, where the subject of the painting is Katie Jo Murphin, that's now up on UK Column, but that is only available to UK Column members. Well, let's move on to the subject of the Paloma Shemirani Inquest. Now, I'm going to label this straight away a highly dangerous inquest for the nation in respect of free will and justice. And with regard to today's news headlines in the UK, personally, I think that this was the most important news. Now, in the first instance, it's not in relation to what many have described as a very strange inquest. Some people have said they've regarded as being manipulated. This is for discussion on another time. But I wanted to draw people's attention to what Mariana Spring had to say about this inquest. She's talking, of course, about Kate Shemirani and her daughter Paloma. And this is a big BBC article which is entitled "Why We Struggle to Protect the Young from Conspiracy Theorist Parents." My goodness, this is an extremely dangerous article by Mariana Spring. And it's dangerous. It's very offensive still in the way that she has used the suffering as a family in order to get her political points across. But why am I saying this? Well, let's just have a look at two quotes here. This is the first one. She's talking about the case. This has raised broader questions around the influence and impact that conspiracy theories held by parents, where beliefs stretch far beyond genuine concerns, can have on children, including adult children. And in order to help protect children in the most extreme cases, where should the line be drawn between child protection and a parent's freedom to raise their child according to their own beliefs? This is immensely dangerous, and people should remember that a few years ago, children's services were used in UK to attack a family because of their political beliefs in supporting UKIP. Kate Shemirani goes on. There's a subheadline, "Trusting Parents." I beg your pardon, Mariana Spring goes on to say, "Trusting parents versus the state. In theory, children should be protected. Any adult can raise concerns about a child's well-being with a local authority, including if there's a worry a child is being harmed by parental beliefs. If it's then decided the child is at risk of harm, an application can be made to the family court for orders to protect them. But in reality, legal experts tell me," this is Mariana Spring, "the threshold for intervention is high." Well, of course, she knows nothing about the so-called child protection system. And I believe that what's happening here is an immensely dangerous attack on parents for their beliefs, with the implication that children will be taken from you as a family if you do not have the correct political and social beliefs. So I'll leave people to take that on board. And let's just move on now with the subject of pharmaceuticals. And Mark, let's bring you back. And the subject is Trump and Pfizer's love-in.
Well, I'm not altogether sure if it's a love-in, but there's a lot of questions being asked. Now, this first slide is from the Defender, the Children's Health Defense, which, of course, is RFK, the current HHS head's former outfit. So RFK now being part of Trump's cabinet, his own former outfit is asking a lot of questions. The headline being "Secrecy over the Trump-Pfizer deal sparks FOIA demands, Freedom of Information demands, and some public outcry." Pfizer stock jumped Tuesday after CEO of Pfizer, Albert Bourla, and President Trump announced a deal to lower U.S. drug prices and invest $70 billion in domestic manufacturing. And then Pfizer, at least for a time, would be relieved of any tariff charges. So I'll also go on to share this slide. It's very important. I marked the important part in red. No tariffs and Medicaid ready. Trump held a press conference with Bourla 30 September. Under the deal, Trump will refrain from imposing tariffs. It'll be Pfizer, in turn, will boost its domestic manufacturing, make its drugs available to Medicaid at a discounted rate, and sell its products directly to U.S. patients at a discounted rate via the yet-to-be-launched government website, Trump RX. A rather curious development, to say the least. And this is from the same day just so we can see what they're saying. This is Pfizer's own press release about the same deal. Pfizer reaches landmark agreement. They're calling it landmark and historic. Those two words are being used with the U.S. government to lower drug costs for American patients. Now, I'll mention here, Brian, that I talked to a longtime American Free Press reader and blogger last night, and a couple other people whose views I respect. They're mostly MAGA people to a degree, Trump supporters, and they feel there's a lot of benefits here in terms of lowering drug prices, because the idea is to make the Medicaid-linked drug prices in the States comparable with what the drug prices that are paid in Europe. Trump is seeking kind of an equilibrium or an equality there, and they feel that's tantamount or similar to giving a Social Security increase to some of these senior citizens in the States. If you lower their drug costs, that's similar to raising their Social Security payments, that kind of indirect benefit. There was also talk about that it is helpful that more jobs will be created, that the drug companies, like them or not, are part of the overall industrial base of any given nation. So improving the job prospects in the States, better paying jobs can be a plus that they see as well. But there's also other questions, of course, in terms of how this will affect vaccine policy. Now, on this is drawn from the Pfizer press release. Let's just show these quick bulleted items. This historic landmark agreement provides certainty from tariffs and clarity on pricing, which furthers Pfizer's ability to expand investment in U.S.-based innovation and return manufacturing to the U.S. And Pfizer will fully focus on delivering the next generation of cures, especially in cancer, obesity, vaccines, and inflammation and immunology. So that's a little more from Pfizer. Now, I have a little bit more from the Children's Health Defense, and this rounds out this report, Brian. State Medicaid programs will be able to access Pfizer's products at prices similar to what the company charges other wealthy nations. As I mentioned, Pfizer has agreed to increase its drug prices in other countries a little bit while lowering them in the U.S. a little bit so that it's fair, Trump was quoted as saying, kind of an equaling effect. However, Pfizer did not agree to cut the prices it currently offers to employers, private insurers, and Medicare. Medicare being purely a federal medical coverage, Medicaid is combination state and federal medical coverage. The White House has not released details about the $70 billion that Pfizer agreed to spend on U.S. domestic manufacturing facilities. Those details, at the very least, are not available yet. So there's a lot of unanswered questions amid some practical benefits, perhaps. But with Big Pharma, of course, any advantages it would get right when the WHO is wrapping up the pandemic treaty, right when another pandemic could conceivably be declared. Will this be particularly advantageous for Pfizer, even over and above other pharmaceutical companies? That and many other questions have yet to be asked or answered, Brian, but this initial report shows that they're very important questions to ask amid whatever benefits there may be. So back to you at this point.
Mark, thank you very much. Absolutely, we must keep our eye firmly on the global pharmaceutical system and the immense power of these pharmaceutical companies. And as you say, many more questions to ask. Patrick, let's bring you back. And the subject is France and Ukraine. I think you're shortly going to be bringing Macron back on screen. So fresh from his dinner alongside Keir Starmer and Queen Mary of Denmark. What's Macron been up to in this field?
That's right. The testosterone is teeming through his veins. As you can imagine, he is poised to take a tough leading role here in showing the Russians who is boss in Europe. And a major move has been made, a major escalation, actually. So he's been giving his orders to take the lead on the escalation with Russia. Just look at this headline. This is the thing that we all feared. Macron leads a charge against Russia's so-called shadow fleet. These are oil tankers, other trade vessels that are reflagged, common practice around the world and throughout history. But Russia is being framed in nefarious terms. Keir Starmer himself a few months ago, which we reported on. He said, we need to do something. We need to stop all these ships in the Baltic. We need to make it untenable for the Russians. So here it is. We'll bring this up on screen on Wednesday, Brian. October 1st, Paris announced that on the 27th September, it had detained a, quote, suspicious vessel off the French coast, and the ship was under investigation for maritime offenses. It was operating under a false flag, says the president of France. But it was exactly the same vessel that had been checked by Estonia in March for the same reasons. So nefarious Russian vessels with false flags, but they're boarding ships. How long before they start impounding them here? And so this is what it's all about. We'll go to the statements of intent. It is extremely important, says Macron, to increase pressure on the shadow fleet because it clearly reduces Russia's ability to fund its war effort. So they're back to the old canard from February 2022. We need to stop Russia from selling oil because it's funding the war in Ukraine. I mean, it's just kind of a spurious claim and excuse to declare economic warfare, but there's more to it here. And we'll go back to this statement. And this is what the game that's being laid out looks like, Brian. In the coming days, our chiefs of staff, in coordination with NATO and within the framework of the, quote, coalition of the willing. I remember that. That was the one they used in Iraq, but we digress. Macron continues, a group of some 35 countries have had to come together to provide security guarantees for Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire. And we'll meet to create joint actions in the coming weeks. So this is the sort of escalation when you start impounding ships on the high sea and preventing Russia from trading with other countries, physically preventing them. This is usually a prelude to war. It has been historically. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at here, Brian. I think it's hugely disturbing, and we'll be reporting on this going forward.
Thank you, Patrick. Absolutely agree with your concerns. We can see that, yes, the next thing could well be that these Russian ships are actually stopped and boarded on the international seas, and that would take things into a new area very, very quickly. Now, let's come back to the subject of UK, and Prince William has been speaking to, not least to the BBC. He's talking about changing the monarchy when he's king, but he's also talking about stress around the, the family overwhelming him. Let's just have a little look at this video clip.
If history doesn't overwhelm you, is there anything that does?
Yeah, I think stuff to do with family overwhelms me quite a bit. You know, worry or stress around family side of things, that does overwhelm me quite a bit. But in terms of, you know, doing the job and things like that, I don't feel too overwhelmed by that. Not now anyway. When I was younger, yeah, there are bits that overwhelm you, a bit like, whoa, are we actually doing this? Is this sort of happening? But with time and age, I think you feel a bit more settled in that side of things, and you go, actually, I could do that. And even if a few curveballs come in, that doesn't necessarily overwhelm me. When it's to do with family and things like that, then that's where I start getting a bit overwhelmed, as I think most people would.
Well, I've got to say that interview didn't fill me with confidence. This man seems to have so many personal and family problems. I begin to question whether he's actually capable of doing the job of being an effective monarch in UK. This is some of the quotes that have come out today. Change is coming is effectively what he's saying. I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda, change for good, and I embrace that. I enjoy that change. I don't fear it. That's the bit that excites me, the idea of being able to bring some change. He went on, repeats there, I don't fear it. That's the bit that excites me. I think if you're not careful, history can be a real weight and an anchor around you, and you can feel suffocated by it and restricted by it too much. So history is coming into the sights as far as William's concerned. There are points when you look at tradition and go, Is that still fit for purpose today? Is that still the right thing to do? Are we still doing and having the most impact we could be having? So I'm going to ask a question on today's UK column news, and that is, it seems to me from what he's saying in very vague, veiled terms that UK's Christian history and traditions are going to be out. And what we're going to get from William is more woke multicultural history and traditions. That's what will be coming in. But we'll wait and see how accurate I am on that little prediction. So, Patrick, let's welcome you back again. And the subject is Moldova.
Yes, I just want to point people, we showed this a couple of weeks ago, this situation that's been brewing. We were warning it's coming, and the elections have happened this past week. Here's the headline: Moldova pro-EU party wins majority in election dominated by, quote, Russian interference. So there's a lot of reports and accusations about Russian interference in the Moldovan elections. It's a very, very key territory strategically, right alongside Ukraine. Is likely that this is going to be used as another front, but we'll bring up the leader here, who just recently did a state visit to the UK and met King Charles. So our headline is EU-NATO win Moldovan election, because that's really the takeaway here. And so if we look at some of the interesting details to pay attention to, they talk about Russian interference in the mainstream media, but two pro-Russian parties, the Heart of Moldova and Moldova Mar, were barred from the vote on Friday over allegations of illegal financing and vote buying. So again, allegations, they were barred. So they took away some significant electoral blocks there. But this is 1.6 million voted. That's approximately 52% of the eligible electorate in that country. But this is the interesting part: 288,000. That's 17.5% of the total, coming from overseas diaspora polling sites. Now, how you can't break that down because the Moldovan government's not giving statistics on who voted which way on all of these overseas polling sites. So it's a tiny little country, but with a huge diaspora around the world. Now, which way that diaspora is leaning, pro-European or pro-Russian, it's not altogether clear. Now, the ones in Transnistria, this is the autonomous pro-Russian breakaway republic. There were bomb scares at their polling sites. They had to leave Transnistria and travel 20 miles or so to vote in a Moldovan poll site, because they still have Moldovan passports. Ostensibly, they can still vote. But there were bomb scares at some of these polling sites. That's interesting. There's also reported bomb scares at some of the certain overseas polling sites as well. So that's kind of interesting. But the bottom line here, and we warned about this a couple of weeks ago, we'll bring this up on screen. You can see that map, why it's so important strategically. But what we're warning is destabilizing Moldova, Europe, and Zelensky's plan to thwart Trump-Putin peace efforts with provocations in Transnistria. So this could be opening up a new front to draw Ukraine into Transnistria, and which is pro-Russian. There's 1,500 Russian peacekeepers there, and Zelensky would immediately go to Trump and say, "Donald, look, the Russians it will be a false flag attack." That's my prediction, but there'll be the Russians. We need more cash, more weapons. Please give us more weapons, and then it'll give the Europeans something to rally around. So that's how I see the whole Ukraine gambit has stalled so badly at the moment. This would provide them with something fresh, something new and shiny for the media and the political elites in Europe, and for Trump too, to rally around this new sort of front that could open up here. That's what we're afraid of. We hope that doesn't happen, but it's certainly lining up that way, especially with these election results.
Patrick, thank you very much for that report. And it certainly seems that what we are not seeing is Western politicians, US, European, UK politicians really being passionate on the world stage for peace and obtaining peace, whether it's in Ukraine or Eastern Europe or into Gaza. This is something they simply will not do. Now, let's have a look at a little bit of good news for the end of today's UK column news. And we're back on the subject about what ordinary people are now starting to do. And a big thank you to Will Coleshill, who's been out on the streets looking at the Labour conference and also talking to some local people. Let's have a look.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Will Coleshill reporting. Today I'm down outside the Labour conference at the Farmers to Action and Together and Veterans and Bikers protests against Keir Starmer, his policies, his death tax and everything else. Today we have a united front, so we're going to be going around speaking to people and seeing what their views are on a range of different issues. But they've all united today, and I think it's going to be quite interesting. The main thing that's brought you out here today?
Support, isn't it? Support for the farmers. Obviously against the digital ID, mate.
I'm not really going to do much speaking, but I support the farmers. You know what I mean? What they're shouting, what everything you've heard before over there. It's facts, innit? So, big up the farmers.
Come with Farmers to Action, support them, and just get the message across about the inheritance tax needs to be abolished for all, not just for farmers. And if you want food, you've got to look after a farmer.
Basically, I don't want to be like China, simple as. Keir Starmer's trying to override the Bill of Rights. They tried to use the Supreme Court to overwrite the mandate of the British public multiple times. Now the latest move by the communist regime is to enforce the digital ID.
It's fantastic. We're here today outside the Labour conference. As many of you know, Labour have let this country down miserably, and we're here to send a message to Keir Starmer. We will not accept mandatory digital ID.
It's something to do with the fact that Keir Starmer is putting veterans at risk again. They restarting the vexatious prosecutions of Northern Ireland veterans. The new legislation that he is purporting to do in the command paper is absolutely useless. It will just reopen old wounds and put us back in the dock.
I'm Rob, I'm with Together. We're here protesting against digital ID and also in support of the farmers today.
So really excellent to see people not only out on the streets, brave enough to stand up and give their view, but extremely well informed in the subjects that they're interested in. And this means that they're putting across a very coherent argument to pull apart these pernicious globalist policies. Now, if that was protesters outside the Labour conference, let's have a little look about how Willsey got on when he went to speak to some of the advance political party supporters.
Immigration is one that's clearly become an urgent problem and need to get on top of that.
I've worked for the council all my life. We were told to watch out for grooming gangs, but yet nothing's ever been done about them.
Well, obviously immigration's a big one. You know, that's the topic that everybody wants to talk about. Me personally, though, I'm into defence, and I don't like the way Labour are doing their strategic defence review. So that's a big one for me personally. And obviously, the other major issue that we've got at the moment is freedom. It's been eroded in every sense of the word, and freedom of speech in particular is one of the big things that seems to be going in this country.
Democracy, really, and we're not getting that.
The economy, the people who are running the finances of this country are messing it up, and I would say some are even deliberately wanting to do so. There's some really dark stuff going on.
The lower and middle classes are being forced out of owning land. Whether you believe in the conspiracies or not, I am worried about things like an economic communism, for example, coming from the WEF.
I mean, I worked in schools for a long time. Teachers actually have food in their drawers for children. That shouldn't be happening in the UK. Sorry. Not when we're actually feeding other people who've never paid a penny in the system.
We've got a couple of things in common, and those things in common are we want freedom of speech and we love Britain. We love our country.
The culture, the fabric of society. So family values, our beliefs, our values, what we, the unwritten, intangible things that hold, the glue that holds society tightly together.
And bringing back Christian values to Great Britain.
So really excellent to see those people. They know their subject. They're not going to sit quietly and idly by while these pernicious globalist policies come in. And of course, these are the very people not only to get local councillors elected in the future to get their own MPs elected. These are the people able to stop these policies as they come through to local level via the city councils and the local councils. So we'll end there. Well done to all those people who are saying, no, we're not having these terrible policies from Keir Starmer. Patrick, thank you very much for joining me. Beautiful location there in France. And big thank you to Mark Anderson for coming into today's news as well. We will have a UK column extra for our members in a few moments. So if you can, join us then. For everybody else, a huge thank you for joining today's UK column news. We will see you next Monday. Bye-bye.